when we talk about the threes, sevens, and eights being independent, we also want to help you guys to know they're still relational. And we would never want to leave or even start this conversation without the understanding that the desire for human connection is for every single Enneagram type. And so maybe you're high in 8 or 7 or 3 and you're learning, okay, just as a reminder, I may be assertive and want some independence in the way I move socially through the world, but I definitely want some healthy dependence, some healthy connection. And I want to encourage you right there, because there's no good human survival if we don't have that connection piece. So just keep that in mind, and we will go ahead and talk even a bit more about this as we look at my slideshow here on the aggressive, assertive, independent stance. However you like to say that, that's what we're going to look at, what works for you. And I have some tips for you too, if you're married to somebody like this, just to get to know them better. I try not to make it the same as all the podcasts, because I really do think it's important that we try to both, review, but also learn together continually. So wake up if you're thinking this is going to be boring, but definitely also understand we have to get to the basics too. And then make sure you put mute on if you are sharing your, sound with us. We want to be able to hear each other's questions and right now too. Okay, so here's our chat, and this is really just like we talked about the compliant and dependent stances, and we also talked about the withdrawing stance. Today, we're talking about the assertive stance, and Jen is going to put in the Zoom notes. If you missed those chats, she's going to put a link so you can have those chats, those access points, so that you can have that. But basically, I love this quote from Sharon Anthony Bauer: the basic difference between being assertive and aggressive is how our words and behaviors affect the rights and well-being of others. So that's very important that we look at that together, that we really want to, not only we're going to talk about what do threes and sevens and eights, why they do this, because we don't think they do it just to be bad or wrong, of course, but we also want them to know, if you're a 3, 7, or 8 here listening, that we really want you to leave today with the sense of the rights and well-being of others, to not just your own assertive positioning. That's something that we can learn. And that's why, if you came in later, I started us off with a deep breath, just to be able to be present and to be able to hear from one another. Now, before we get to anything big, I'm going to read this, come back, make sure everyone's on mute. But I just want you to have a basic definition of these assertive types. And as you can see, these types are bold and assertive and carry a strong energy with their presence generally. Doesn't mean they don't run out of energy, sometimes too. Often there's a quickness of mind with these types. And, you may feel like others are moving too slowly for you, and that slowing down is virtually impossible. I don't know about you if you're in this stance, but I often think that the world is moving at such a faster pace than it really is. And I'm surprised it isn't a different day of the week down the road. Or I might put a date on that's farther away, because I've already lived out this whole day and I'm moving on. So sometimes if you're in a relationship with one of these types, you don't realize how fast they're moving. And as such, there's this push for agenda, like maybe there's a boredom, or there's an insistence of, if I don't push, I won't get my needs met, and that's dangerous. And so some of their, of course, characteristics then would be action-oriented, direct, high energy generally, as I said, relative optimism, because you can't be stagnant and stuck if you're going to be assertive and future-oriented, and they are future-oriented, and they're also quite persuasive at times. So I'm just going to come back and, like I said, mute any extra sounds. But I want to ask first and foremost if there's any thoughts or questions about this as we chat. Okay, and I am going to keep going and let Rachel in from the waiting room. Okay. So what I really wanted to do briefly is a review of these 3 types, and I've added a little bit to our standard definition so that you guys could really get the nuance of the 3, 7, and 8. And Even as I talk, I'm squirreling away a bit in my aggressive stance, wanting to know where everybody's from. So if you get a chance to share that, that'd be fun to hear too. Um, but I want to let you know that the threes move against feelings in this way, and can move from a space of shame. And what gets in the way of the goals of their marriage, is that they're seeking attention and praise for their accomplishments. And so you might think, okay, threes are very loving, and they're heart types. And so you're like, they have feelings, but threes can be very feelings dominant, and also, of course, deal with feelings as feelings repressed. If you ever look at an Enneagram chart, you'll see that threes are in the middle of the Enneagram space. There's an inner triangle, and they're right in that middle, kind of, I think of them as primary colors, 3, 6, and 9. And those people struggle with being both the dominant and whatever their center is, the repressed center. So without further confusing anyone here who's newer to the Enneagram, just keep it in mind that even though feelings are special to threes and they can read the room very well with their feelings, they're often inhibited in their own, and often even more so, move from a space of shame in their marriage. And so instead of directly addressing feelings, they seek attention and praise for accomplishments, which never really can deliver the fullness of the love they desire. Now, sevens move against negative feelings, and being part of the thinking triad, they often have a deep distrust for others. And often this movement and this aggressiveness can get in the way of their happiness, the very thing, as we all know, sevens want, which is satisfaction and an avoidance of the deep emotional pain that they think will wound them to the core and kill them. This, unfortunately, avoidance of all negative feelings can actually lead them to really repress to the point that they don't have the healthy feelings experiences. So instead of really in marriage looking for healthy feelings experiences, they can just remember, as thinking types have a long memory, sometimes in the past when they were wounded, and instead say, I'm just going to take care of my security needs through looking for my desires to be met. And then lastly, but definitely not least, are powerful eights who move against not just the others independently, but against vulnerable feelings. And that's sometimes what gets in the way of their marriage, is because they're looking for autonomy or the ability to take care of themselves by being in control and even leading their spouse and others, without allowing in the innocence virtue and without allowing their spouses to see their soft hearts, which really are beautiful. And so there's this pull to say, please do what I'm asking. Please let me lead, because I don't trust you with my heart because you've hurt me or let me down. And of course, if you're familiar with H, you know, often there's even more energy. And this is hard to say because threes and sevens have a lot of energy. But I would say that being body types, I think that eights, like ones and nines, have a lot of powerful energy. And it can be very disappointing if they don't know that the other person has less energy, or they might see them using their energy in different ways and systems. And so it's important for them to, for all of us to hold that intention with what we know about eights, that they're moving against vulnerable feelings, but there's reasons in history as to why they're doing this. This lends you compassion for your spouse. And then we'll talk this slide through and I'll see if there's any questions. So feel free to write some in the Zoom chat. Maybe you already have. But some of the challenges then, as you can imagine, these types might face relationally, are that they're rushing forward with impulsive actions in marriage, or just taking action versus addressing the wounds of the heart that are really important. They can also struggle with connecting just to their own emotions, as I said, and the emotions of their partner to what has occurred. So this is I'm just using the blanket term, softening is important, but they can avoid being soft. I know that one time this very week, my husband was trying to deliver a nonverbal to me, and he said, he's a non 3, 7, or 8. And he said, do you see my nonverbal. And it was like during a turning towards conversation moment, I was like, hey, you didn't turn towards me. And that bothered me. So I did open up to the heart space, but he said, it wasn't a good time. And I was hoping you could read my nonverbals. And so I said, as an aggressive assertive type, I'm sorry, I'm moving so fast, like internally, that I don't really do the best job with nonverbals. So I said, I'm going to work on that. And then he said, I'm going to work, on, really attending to your needs. And then I said something else too, because I realized I needed to, there was a couple of things I needed to do differently. So if you're in this stance with me, understand that I get it personally, that struggling to read nonverbals is a thing. And that when we take those deep breaths and we come in with a bit of softness and a little bit slower, even if it's just down from 100 to 90, that can allow us perhaps to see the nonverbals better of our spouse. And then lastly here, in this set of bullet points, I want you to remember this group sometimes reframes negatives or outcomes before processing. It's just everything's going so fast. So instead of really dealing with the depths, they can just reframe it. And so again, just try to be aware if you're one of these types, or if you're going to bring some notes home to your partner, to really look at how you feel and how others might feel before instinctually demanding what you think you need. You can have some very powerful conversations from this space. And that was so beautiful that Wes and I were able to share a really good moment together and teach each other. But we had to be ready, because you have to be ready to be soft, and that cannot always be easy for aggressive assertive types. So are there any questions or comments? And Jen, feel free to let me know if you've seen some as well. And I'm looking through these comments as well. Thank you, Courtney, for your comment. Mm-hmm. Yes, I like how you said it's easy as a withdrawing stance type to feel that the assertive types, what they're moving toward is more important than people. And I think that's really helpful for us to really be honest about together today, that a lot of times they're doing these moves for their people. There's a sense of desperation that if I don't control it, then it won't happen. We won't have a connection. And there's a desperation that comes with that, of like, just from us not being very good with feelings. So it's like, okay, what do I do here? I don't get feelings. I'm not always the best with nonverbals. Therefore, I might as well try to control this relationship. And I've done podcasts where we talk about the ways each and every one of the 9 types controls. So I do want you to hear that every type has a different way of controlling. But each type, of course, wants some self-control and wants to be able to have some ways of learning how to move through the world with some healthy amounts of that. But anyway, too much can lead spouses, as Courtney said, to think, is your agenda bigger than us? Because I feel like you're moving ahead and it's all about you and your agenda. So if you are an assertive type and it is becoming selfish, this is important for you to look at too. Is it? Or is it just that you're afraid of feelings and nonverbals and don't know how to move through those? Okay. Yes, go ahead. Allison has a question.
So I find in marriage that I think it's my gut part that seems to interpret my husband and what he's about to say or how he's feeling. And I found that the slowing down for me is like, just stay on my side and figure out what's going on with me, instead of always just trying to figure out what's going on with him. And I wondered if, like, maybe other 8s, like, because I resonate with the 8 stance, had that same experience, in that it's not that I don't understand the body type. Like, I feel like I really get that, like, maybe too much.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I didn't even know I was feeling that. So I just wondered if maybe some other types felt like that. And what I have found more challenging is that I don't know how I'm feeling, but I tend to look out and think that I know what's going on with other people based on situations or circumstances, kind of like the reading the room of the 3, I guess. I don't know.
And your type again, Allison, for you,
8.
you're the 8. Okay. And
Right. I'm the 8. My husband is a 5.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so you do understand. And do you struggle with, and please feel free to answer her or to write in the Zoom comments if anyone has a comment to that. I'm going to first pause and say that.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like the Catherine girl is saying that maybe I'm putting my needs and saying that it's what he's doing. I don't know if that's what she's saying.
You're just kind of looking to see, maybe I'm doing that a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, that's a possibility. And I like how people are chatting that through with you, Allison, because that was vulnerable and a beautiful thing you did as an 8 to share, like, how can I learn better? And
Mhm.
also you're like, I do get some of this.
Yeah.
Don't forget to listen to the 5 episode today. I was really blown away by how much she shared in the 5 space for your hubby.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, wow. Internally, just getting to sit inside of some of those types.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's been a challenge because, I'm like, "Wah," and he's like, and we're like trying to, I mean, we've been married for 21 years, but we really only found out about the Enneagram 3 years ago. And so like,
Mm.
oh, wow, this makes a lot of sense. It's been really
Yes.
helpful.
Oh, that's so powerful. And there's other 8 and 5
Right.
couples here too, and 5. So feel free to be chatting with each other. I like how Tara resonates with us to say that in her 3-7 pairing, they're moving really fast
Mhm.
because there's 2 of them together. And what I find so fascinating about couples work with Enneagram is we all have our strengths as couples, but we also have our shadows. So something that's really powerful, I think, is to notice what triads you're in together and where you guys have lapses. That's helped our parenting tremendously. Of course, the wisdom from others that have walked ahead of us has helped, and marriage too. But I think it's very valuable for her to just say here with us, like, yeah, there's 2 of us. So this is going to be an important space for us. I know with Wes and I both being positivity types, feelings are hard to dig into it for other reasons. But again, we've also done not just control for every type of the 9 types, but we've also looked at the ways feelings are inhibited on the podcast for every type. And I think every single type, even the feelings types, sometimes deal with feelings inhibition. So we all need help accessing. Let's talk a little bit more about the types, and then we can come back for more conversation, but feel free to keep chatting in the Zoom chat as well. So in relationships with 3s, as I mentioned, sometimes they move against people by being aggressive in their goals in hopes of earning attention. But I think it's extremely important that spouses understand that in their assertion, in this desire and drive for attention, that they're substituting love. And I really, really wanted to process that through saying they work hard to bring their spouse gifts versus depths. And so that could be a very basic phrase if you're in a relationship with a 3, as you say, like, I really appreciate your gifts, but I want your depths. And that is honestly refreshing in a way for 3s to hear, even if it's hard for them to move into that space of giving the depths, because they've been in freeze frame for a while performing. And most 3s that you talk to do have a story about why they're in this space. And they can name something in childhood that just made them feel this was the safest space. So hopefully you don't condemn them or shame them, even if you have to have this conversation often, because we can't change our spouses. And another side of this is the people you're in relationship with that do this, you also have to make the choice as the partner to see this as an act of love toward you, where you might say, I didn't want that gift. I didn't want that fabulous vacation as much as they thought I did. I actually wanted the day-to-day more. I miss them. But I think that it's important that you also appreciate the ways they do love and give to you, because we know how hard it is for us to change. So we can't ask our 3s or any of the types to just stop being you, stop doing all of your things all at once. Instead, we have to invite in these emotional tools we're always sharing on podcasts. We're inviting in self-care practices. And today, our biggest pieces for our aggressive, assertive, independent types are slowing down a bit and making space for relationship. And here in particular with 3s, it's this. And also I've been in a lot of sessions with 3s where they can get a bit cryptic also of, you've gotten very cozy with me being a 3 and carrying the load for us, and I'm watching you live your best life. So you have to be willing to work harder too if you want things to change. And that's something that I even noticed this morning with the 3 is I saw them killing it out there. But I knew that their spouse was having a nice lazy day, and it was nothing against their spouse. Maybe they needed that, but I knew that if things are going to shift, they have to be more honest about balance as a couple. And then let's be honest, sometimes you're like, yes, this is how my 3 moves, and we work. So I also just want to name that because sometimes Enneagram can get very dark and negative. And I want to say that also before we come back for conversation, that sometimes it's a rhythm, and we married our 3 because they're doing this and they kind of like it. So we're not going to overly pathologize. I'm just giving you tips if you're in that space of realizing that you are moving too fast and you're not connecting and you're missing your kids, your family, each other, all of that. So let's come back and see if anyone has any comments or questions from or about the 3 space before we move on. I love hearing who you're married to. Oh, I love what Catherine's husband said. He wanted to earn his love through acts of service. Yes. So sweet. Which reminds me of how something powerful that I've also discovered about 3s is that just through honestly, obviously, trial and error is that sometimes there's such a hard part of slowing down. So bringing the family into like, if I'm going to sit down and not do the dishes and be productive, then maybe I can get my phone out and we can play a game on my phone together, as a family, and I can read trivia to you guys. And that's really like, if you have this attitude of, dinner is for peace. We don't bring technology to the table. We don't, punctuate any of our, aberrations from previous generations, then I think that you might be missing some ways for each of you to lean in. So just please keep that in mind, that there may be spaces and ways that your 3 can calm down, but that you have to also lean in. And, I know that my own sister is a 3, and sometimes we go family vacations together as siblings, and she needs to sit in her car for half the morning and do work and talk in her bigwig, CFO kind of language with people on and say, I'm tuned in. And I know that about her. I'm like, hi, like, do you need anything? And she's showing me like, I'm doing my work here. Like, I'm a big dog. And so I think we also have to, as I said, respect the rhythms, but acknowledge sometimes, like, even in our rhythms, there's a hurt underneath of, I wish that you could just spend time with me. So, and I'm just catching up with Lindsay's comment, but thank you for learning to accept your 3's gifts at first. That's nice that you're doing that. Yeah. And I love that you're asking questions of each other. So any more comments or questions to me before we move on to type 7? Okay. And I see the 3 and 7 comment. I don't know if that's a comment to me. We did have Jackie Brewster on the podcast this past week. She got into it a little bit, and we have had a whole episode on 3 and 7, just so you know, Tara, but tell us if there's a more particular question. You might be answering somebody else's. Okay. All right. As we look at relationships with 7s, I want you guys to know that 7s move against people in order to earn security. There's a sense that sometimes the memes about 7s are that 7s are seeking pleasure. And I've probably contributed to this, by the way, on my Fun Fridays on Instagram. But honestly, I think sometimes it does go deeper. Usually it does with 7s, that instead of just wanting satisfaction, there's a sense of self-soothing. Like right now, if you can see this, you might be able to, you might not, but I have my it's healthy drink, but I have my drink with me, or we might have something that we need to use for stimming, just slowing ourselves down. And it's not just about like, oh, I just love pleasure. It's often just about self-soothing, because we're right there with the 6 and the 5 in the anxiety triad. So many 7s that you might be married to might not say, I'm anxious. It's also very low lying sometimes. You might not even see it. For me, have felt many other symptoms before actual butterflies in my adult years. Of course, in the childhood years, you're going to feel more if you're a 7. But by the time you've learned these moves that we all learn in our types, you get pretty good at finding positivity around your issues as a 7. And so I think that now it becomes looking and slowing down what's happening in my body, asking yourself, am I anxious? What are my feelings? Versus just this simplistic, I want satisfaction. And there's this core belief for 7s that others won't help them. I know a couple of days ago, I was interviewing somebody for the podcast in April, and like ahead, we haven't heard from her yet. And she said she was praying for our audience. And I almost cried ugly tears right there. Like, I was like, you care about us? Like, I feel like we're orphans all on our own. Like, somebody cares about me and my people besides me and Jen, who pray for you every week. So, and my team, of course, like there's a lot of thoughtful people.
Yeah.
Let me
So
go
we
ahead
can
though,
grab
and
Hayden-
I'm
Hayden
gonna
too.
do a stop screen share to
I'm gonna
be.
grab Hayden too.
Why?
So Grant
But-
has someone to talk to.
Oh boy, hold on here.
Because then Grant's just only gonna
Hayden-
talk to Keegan, and then I'm gonna have no one to talk to.
I don't
He
see
won't.
anybody who is
Yes.
not muted.
Yes, he will.
I'm gonna mute all. Okay. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Okay. But anyway, back to 7s, make sure that if you're with a 7, that you let them know that you truly care about them. And that was just so beautiful for this woman to just say that. And she even sent me a message later that night, a voice message, to say how meaningful our time was. And I was absolutely dumbfounded, because I am every single time somebody enters that feeling space with me. So please know that even though somebody might be many years into being a 7, it still matters when you tell them that you care or that you love them. Also, do understand that the negative feelings have been pursued in the past with 7s and have not worked out for them. There may be a memory of childhood where somebody made fun of them for being too sensitive, as I had, or other structures in place, perhaps an abandonment time for a 7. So there's just pieces that you need to know about why they don't want to share. And you can imagine that for your types as well. And then, of course, this leads to them not trusting readily, because there's a sense of others are really not for me. Others have not taken care of me in the past. And when I have shared my feelings, there's been a difficult result. So we have to realize that as much as we may think 7s are very positive, there's a lot of doom and gloom going on inside of a 7 also, when they're not really purposefully doing the work here. So even though you might say, I don't need to do positive thinking with a 7, because they're so good at rationalizing, you actually do relationally, because they feel that relationally things will not be good and things will fall apart. So you don't have to about experiences and life pleasures. They know that they can find fun there, but you really do have to build faith in a 7 relationally. So that's what I want you to work on if you're with a 7, is building faith relationally. I know that my husband has been working very hard on that with me. Anyone have a question or thought about 7s? I like how Courtney said that about the multitasking about 3s too. Yes, I love that if it works for them. As I mentioned with my sister, that's how most of us have related to her, including her 4 children. But somebody else said no, and like, I think we're all agreeing the ideal would be for these aggressive assertive types to not be multitasking, but that sometimes we just work with what we actually have, and that's okay. And I'm so glad Claire says this explains a lot, that she's been working on her 7 for, just kind of putting this all together about why she might be the way she is. That's very help. I also love hearing that some of you have relationships with 7s, but that it's really, it's a process. And so Courtney says, what builds faith for a 7? Don't make me ugly cry here. And I see Jen is like also nodding. She wants to know.
Well, I was going to answer it and I was like, you know what? And then I was like, no, I need to ask Krista to answer it because she's the 7. And actually this is good too.
I think just longevity, sticking around through all of the questions of a thinking type or a 7, just being there for them, being present and allowing them to be who they are. One of my favorite things about Wes is that I am so honest with where I'm at in our relationship, and he holds that for us the ways he can. And I hold other pieces of our relationship. I wouldn't have thought that as a young, gleaming, idealistic bride who thought life would be perfect. I thought we would have the healthiest of emotions. And I think every 7 with their ideals comes into life thinking that, or marriage. But that once things broke down, I just put him right in the box with everyone else. So sometimes I even have to look outside of myself, and he accepts that about me. And I say, I told Jen this, but this weekend I said to him, I really want to take care of you. You're a type 1 and you work so hard. And that's my deepest desire, is to take care of you one day. And he just, was really like that. Thank you. Like that's so sweet. And I was like, those kinds of things are the things that tell me how much I love you, because I don't always have the feelings. So that, like we said, with 3s, let people love you where they're at, and try to understand that your way of loving them is not the same way as they love you, but that, trust me, from every part of my being, I wanted to love my husband, and I still do. I want to nurture him and love him. But as far as me really building up faith, otherwise, it's just from that consistent him knowing I'm honest, I'm authentic, I'm still broken, but I'm still beloved. And I love when a spouse can do that. Particularly if we come outside of this narrative of Wes and I and come back to the general narrative about 7s, I think we need to remember that when 7s are running really fast, extra fast, way too fast, that it can help build faith if you're not coming at it from a critical space, but that you come alongside them with a space of help. Because what they have is an inner critic as well, like every type, at least a little bit, even if they're not a 1. So I think they know they're running fast. And I think it's helpful for you to build some relationship faith up by saying, gosh, I see you running hard and you're tripping or slipping or who knows what you're doing. But let's laugh about it together. Let's see what I can do to help you. And that's so opposite, because what we want to do sometimes is punish and put our people in shame, and we want to put them in darkness. So if you're in my deep dive on Wednesday, we have a deep dive podcast. We just did a 3-part series on shame that I'm really happy about. So make sure you address the shame pieces together too, however you do that. And somebody's asking about wings. I love that Rachel said that, that Rachel answered that by saying it's difficult to tell about the wings differences. Do you see anything else, Jen, that I need to pick up on?
No, you answered it really well. I think about building faith for a 7. And also the question was about assuring the friend that you're still going to be there. So I think that was very similar.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Courtney, for clarifying that. Yep. And then gifts are going to vary for 7s. Some of us want everything. Some of us want nothing, and that's because we might be all in our 5 where we're like, I'm self-preserving. I've got it. I don't need you. If you catch a 7 in a vulnerable, more heart open space, they're usually a type that likes a lot of stimulation and tactile. So they probably want quality time. They want the food. They want, everything, like I said. And so this kind of larger than life 3, 7, and 8 thing comes back to us again of these aggressive, assertive types. They want to drink from love's cup to the fullest. And so you have to be able to temper that a little bit with some realities of maybe you want everything, but maybe we have 2 hours. So that's helpful for a 7 to hear, and they're maturing. Some of the 7s I talk to don't know much about the 5 space. space. They don't really do arrow work. I don't expect everybody to go deep into the Enneagram, but at least what I can tell you here, if you don't know about that, is that 7s do actually come back to a space of introversion and focus when they have exerted at least some of their energy. And they can do a lot of engineering projects. A lot of my male 7s are engineers. And I even have a few female engineering 7s, but I just want you to know there are also overlays of males and females that make things even more particular. Okay, so let's move on to type 8. Now, type 8s, relationships with 8s can be absolutely beautiful and so deep. And they're just often so good at protecting and providing, as you probably well know. And they really want that back. I can't express that enough about any one of you here who is an 8 or who identifies as partially an 8 or has the swing or arrow space to an 8. It feels difficult to love so big and so hard and so much, and then to have people not love you back in the same capacity. And it's just, it's really makes them angry. But what we know about this kind of anger typically with 8s is, yes, they're 5 senses people and their body types, but it's also that anger that is really, if you look at the deeper layer, it's an anger that is actually sadness, because there's a sense of loss when I work so hard to let you see how loyal I am to you and how I'll protect you. And I believe in you and I believe and see your heart and your intent. And now you're my spouse and you have not done the same for me. It feels so violating. It feels so distrustful. And I'm so angry. And now I want to hurt you because I was vulnerable before you and you did not pay me back for that. And instead you took somebody else's side or position or prioritized somebody else ahead of me. So you hear the passion in my voice when I say this, because this is a person who is passionate. Now, if we had a chance to get into all of the subtypes, we would note that the self-pres 8 is a bit more 5-like and a bit more stoic and even more independent, but there's still a sense for them of this happening in the past. Just like if and when you get to hear Jennifer Passmore's type 5 episode today, she talks about the past when she didn't perceive somebody was there for her, even though she later realizes it was a matter of different understandings. I think that self-pres 8 has more of a history of that. So it's very powerful for you to speak with a 5 that you're in a relationship, or an 8 that you're in a relationship with, and say to them, like, I see you. I see the work you have done for us. I see your commitment to showing up in protective ways for us. And I am here with you for this journey. And I want to know how I can do that with you. Of course, there may be a caveat. I need to do that within my own ethical and energy codes. And so that's why, though, 8s can feel cryptic about others' intents, or if you have an 8 wing or you have an arrow to 8, that you might feel like, gosh, I worked so hard. And I would encourage you, if you're in that space, this almost like 8 wing 7 space versus 8 wing 9, this is an important space for you to try to remember with wings to balance both of them out, because we have this living example with a couple of young people in our circle that are just growing up with learning the Enneagram as brand new adults, about 18. And you see one who is a stark 8 wing 7 and one who is a stark 8 wing 9. And hey, I'm a 7. There's a lot of great things about that person. And I'm not, being jocular here to say that I think most 8s, because of this energy, gravitating towards 7 can maybe move people away a bit more, because there's so much power. And it's love in motion. I call that 7-8 pairing love in motion. It's so much intensity. And moving toward that 9 space as an 8, as long as you don't become too idealistic and too high-minded and overly moralistic and judging everybody too hard, because we know an 8 and a 9 together could be very judgy. But I want you to understand that slower pace, that ability to accept what is important versus pushing with both the aggressive 7 and the aggressive 8. And if you're a 7 hearing that, try to lean a bit more toward your 6, so you're not all aggressive 7 and 8. But then let's finish this part of the chat up too, that these eights can resist being seen vulnerably, of course, from what we shared. And also to add to that, often there's, like sevens, a history of something that was absolutely intolerable in terms of vulnerability. So there's a sense of not going back there. So that's going to take time to build trust. That's probably a question that is in the chat or will be. And I want to refer you to a few weeks back. We had a podcast with a type 8, and she really powerfully shared a testimony of how she can move back into trust one step at a time. So I want you to remember that podcast if you need to hear that. And then, of course, some of you know that eights are leaders generally, but it's to stay safe. It's not to be bossy. It's to know that they're going to be okay because, as I said, they have had some cryptic experiences with other people turning away. And I'm going to come back full circle to the feelings conversation as I come back to you guys here to say that, we started this conversation, if you came in late, with the sense that threes, sevens, and eights all need to welcome more into that feelings space and into the nonverbal space, because an 8 can read very, very quickly that other people don't care without looking. And I had that experience about a year ago with an 8 who wanted to celebrate. I don't think I've shared this, but wanted to celebrate an anniversary at a family party, and only birthdays were announced. And before the announcements could be finished, they ran out because they were so hurt that no one had identified their marriage anniversary as being special. And I was like, this is so beautiful and soft. I saw the soft heart of the 8, but I also knew that had they looked at the feelings and nonverbals and paused and been able to take some deep breaths, they would have been able to either say that rationally or wait for that to be noted. Instead, they went to the car for several hours. So I have done many things like this. I try to share them often, the ways that I make mistakes, so I'm not judging that person. I just want you to know that I think that the 3s, 7s, and 8s, when they do stop to pause, do stop to look around, that can be powerful, and it can be very hard. I'm even not doing it perfectly right now. So any comments or questions, Jen, that you think I need to take a look at, or that anyone here wants to ask?
Yeah, so I think the biggest question that is coming into play right here is, would it be useful to tell an 8, thank you for, sorry, my doorbell is ringing.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Okay. I couldn't hear the full.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Keep going, Chris. Keep going.
Okay. But what you're saying is that 8s want to know about steamrolling, or I'm looking at comments and I don't see it fully. Okay, go ahead, Allison.
So I had said, because what you were saying before really resonated with me, is like, when I find out these things about myself and then I use that language myself, it sort of educates other people on what I'm doing, because it can look very aggressive. But when I say, like, I was having a conversation with my teenage daughter and she goes, I feel like you're attacking me right now.
Yeah.
I was like, thank you for saying that, Audrey, because really I'm wanting to protect you. I'm on your side, but I can see how my energy feels like I'm attacking you. And so I started using words like, I just feel like I really want to be on your side right now. I really feel like I want to protect you. And I really feel like I want to take on the challenge for you. And then my husband and my daughter and my kids can sort of understand where I'm coming from, rather than just this, just the energy that I have can come across a different way to them without them knowing what my real intention is. And so I was just resonating with what you were saying, but flipping it back on myself and saying, when I use those words, and something that was really meaningful to me when you did a podcast on the 8s, is that I really struggle with being a female 8, because I feel like the words that are used are so male dominant. But you had said that 8s are willing to accept a challenge instead of being a challenger. And I was like, yes, I can latch on to that. And so when I start using those words, like I will accept any challenge. And like, I start noticing when I accept those challenges, and then it sort of educates the people around me. And then there was, I think Courtney was saying she noticed a friend at church, and I said, like my husband would say, I can see that you're trying to protect me right now. And I don't think she's an 8, but she had said, so if I said that to her, that might be meaningful. I was like, I think it would. And then Lindsay said, I think it would too. So maybe from the 8s, we would.
Oh,
anyway.
So what would be the most helpful for us? And I agree, Courtney, I do not like the term challenger anymore. I love protector, defender. Please feel free to throw out other terms you like. But Allison, are there other ways that you feel like we should know from? I love hearing, or any eights here, anything you want to share about what we can know about you guys?
Well, I guess for me, it would help me in my own journey. And I try to also do this back when someone else is curious with me. Like, I'm wondering where that energy is coming from for you. And then I might have forgotten to say, I just want to protect you. And I might, just that simple question might trigger me to go, I just really feel passionate about this, or I just really feel like taking on this challenge. And, and that person might say, well, this doesn't really involve you. It's not for you to take on, but I appreciate your energy. So maybe like the curiosity, because like you said in the beginning, we have the energy and we're going so fast that just that question back to us, I don't know. I think for me it would be helpful.
Yeah, I like that. I also think it might be powerful to just something that I've done so my own daughters wouldn't lose their relationships with their two best friends that are eights, and they're a 4 and a 9. And I've shared this before, but I think it's important to say is I saw that they were going to lose the bond. And I knew that these two 8 best friends were like the best friends they could ever have. And I'm like, you guys are going to lose them because you can't meet their challenges. You can't meet them where they're at, and you don't have the same power and energy and passion. They do, but it's quieter. It's just different energy. So we just took a look outside of the narrative together, and we said, here's what it is. Do we want to lose these friendships, or do we want to respect where each other are at with energy? And it's still a walking out. It doesn't mean that there might be different friendships for different seasons, but they were able to at least name it, and they made this. Teens love doing slideshows just like we did. And they said, they did a slideshow presentation a couple weeks ago, all of them. And they said, we have the 2 8s living in a bedroom together in our dream house. And you guys are out in the cottage out back because you guys can't handle us. But they were fine with that. They were like, we've learned. And I've heard that 2 8s, I've heard this on other podcasts that sometimes when there's so much energy there, they actually need a little space too. And that's okay too, to say, if we have 2 intense, energized people together, we might even have our own quarters of the house, and then we come back together at different times. But it's important that we respect the differences and the withdrawing of everybody, and just name it. I think I do think that I feel bad for the 8s who feel like they're being left out, because they're like, you never meet me where I'm at. So if any 8s want to share, how could we meet you when we don't have the same energy? Do you have any thoughts about that? Like, when we can't meet you and can't keep up the pace, how can we still love you? And we might just need that as a reflection for all of us, because we might not have a perfect answer for that. Thank you. You're so sweet, Allison. Just keep showing up. Interesting. Just like we said to 7, about 7, just keep showing up, keeping inviting us out, keep proving that you care. And also affirming the energy. So once again, naming it, we have different energy to hear here. I love your energy, being positive about it. I love that, Melanie. Thank you.
I can share a little bit. I don't know
Yeah,
if
please. Carrie.
I'm an 8. My husband is a 5. And we're in Egypt. My husband's actually a big, strong kickboxing Moroccan man too. So I'm an aggressive, 8 stance. And I say aggressive because I think that's how other people perceive me. And I'm often surprised when my passion or intensity is met with aggression. And so it's just me not being very understanding or reflective of myself that, oh, did I make you mad? It's this like, I'm surprised that like all of a sudden someone's gotten angry at me, or my husband is like gotten upset about something. And I'm like, what is, so I know this is like a constant journey, but I think how can, if the question is, how can I feel loved by people? It really is for them to understand that for me, conflict is absolutely not the end of anything. it's,
Mm.
I always perceive it as an opportunity for growth in a relationship.
Mm.
But other people, unfortunately, I think oftentimes think that conflict means it's the end of something. Even my 5 husband, I see that the way he interprets our conflict is always that, you know, it gets apocalyptic for him in his head, even if it was a small trigger. So for me, I want to be able to convey to him that I don't feel like I love you more than ever, you know, kind of thing. And nothing, you know, this is just hang with me through this, because at the other end is just going to be something better than what we had before. So I guess this is, I'm here to understand what other tools I can use to, well, to one, like you said, slow the pace and not be an aggressive, you know, not come off as aggressive as best as I possibly can. So yeah, I'm here for looking for tools.
Mhm.
For alternatives and stuff too. So I'll stop for a minute. I know there's some chat going on, but thank you for the space to explore that.
Wow. Well, that was just so well said. And I'm going to be catching up with the comments, but you're really getting us to this. Eights are saying what we can do. So we need to be reading through those comments. And B, I guess I also want to ask eights, because I'm thinking this with you guys, that if somebody says to if an 8 has the courage to say, what you said, which was, I'm here, I'm here in this marriage with my full heart. It sounds like you're elocuting to your husband some of your deepest feelings. I think that's probably really meaningful to other people. And this is an example. An 8, as Kathleen said, might be doing all the projects. And so somebody, maybe that's exactly how it is with my daughters and their 8 friends in the podcast. And here my daughters are off dancing 5 days a week and taking college classes and extremely overwhelmed for who they are. And their 8s are thinking, where are you on our podcast? I think what would really be helpful for anybody, whether it's marriage, like you shared, Carrie, or friend groups with 8s, is if the 8 can say, guys, my feelings are hurt. I'm working really hard here. And I'm going to be honest. I'm sad because I feel alone. And that does happen, thankfully, with that friend group, amongst many things. And so then immediately, I don't know if this is true for other 8s of you, but when you are soft and vulnerable amidst healthy people, it brings people back. Like, oh, I had no idea. I just saw you charging ahead. I didn't know you were feeling soft and tender and alone. So that draws my withdrawing types right back. Now, they're not 5s. I understand with 5s that might not be as, the perfect tool, but 5s seek understanding. So listening to today's podcast with Jennifer Passmore about type 5 can continue to give you insight about your 5. But I do want to tell you with 8s, please do be vulnerable as much as you can with safe people. Because I know some 8s, like we said earlier, they have histories like I can't be vulnerable, but find people that you can and that actually care about your heart. And yes, please share, Tessa.
Carrie, speaking, I'm married to a 5 and 37 years. And what I have found just recently is that he does not understand my passion. I am like a very passionate person, and he doesn't get it. And I've come to the realization that he's not capable of getting it. So if I want that connection with him, which I'm a 2, and I really want that connection, I just have to remain very calm. But I go to my 8 space because I need a voice. So you need a voice. If you're suppressing yourself, you're going to go crazy. You need that voice, but you need to go to a calm voice. It's all about your passion. It's all about your power. The 5 does not want to be attacked with any power. It does go apocalyptic like that. And if you can just calm your voice, but still have your power, because it'll be semantics, it'll be argumentative strategy, it'll be talking about talking, and you're never going to get to what you're talking about, because it's always about your passion. So you can get everything across, but you can train yourself to be more calm in doing it.
Hmm.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Are we gonna get this recording later? Is this gonna be sent?
Yes,
Sharon?
Jen is going to send it out, and I'll put them all in the email, the weekly emails too. But she's actually, well, she can't do this one. Yeah, right now. So we will later, but yes. And we, eights, feel free to answer this too in the chat, but as we end, there's an important question. And that was, how can we tell eights that we need a bit of space? I think this is, for me, I want to say a lot of eights would say, I love when you can just directly tell me. But we might have to get to a heart space, of course. If you keep telling your eight, I need a lot of space from you, and then they keep seeing you with others. And so I think that my daughters have said our 8-wing 7 friend, if she shows up at one of our performances and we're talking to others, the 8 says, why aren't you all about me? I'm here to see you. But their other 8-wing 9 friend can say, I can fend for myself a bit. So as an 8, I want to encourage you guys, don't put all of your eggs in that one basket. And I see this with a lot of marriages too. I see a lot of people when they get married to an 8, they don't have as many friends. They can't do jobs as much because their 8 does demand a lot. So I would just say to the 8 also in that, be watchful that you don't demand too much. Try to find your balance as well as a person. But I think everyone here of us aggressive assertive types, we're trying and we have reasons why we have developed the way we have. So I say that with love and understanding. Is there any final questions you see, Jen, that really looked like they needed to be addressed? I see a couple more thoughts or questions out there.
Yeah, I think you covered most of it. I'm so impressed with all the feedback and all the support everyone's given one another. It's been fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming. This has been a blast. Johanna or Johanna from Ireland, nice to see you. So glad that I've gotten to see where people are, and I'll be able to print all the comments and read through them from all the chats and get good podcast, good feedback so that we can look at future spaces. If you want to write anything in on future episodes you'd like to see, I'm just sharing this briefly to let you know where you can find us. Facebook group, Instagram, Collective opens in April on the 19th. And that's just our membership group. If you want more chats like this, I really liked doing these 3, but it did challenge even my space as a 7 to do them all. So I'm just there every month in our collective if you just need this. And I want to say, I want to keep trying to do these. So we'll do what we can to stay balanced over here as well. So thank you guys so much. It was just a joy to see you today. Thank you, Lindsay and everybody. So grateful. Okay, bye.